Colorado's going to be taking on Washington State tonight, and they need a few position groups to step up. Otherwise, they're going to lose again.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Board. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. It's daily fantasy sports made easy. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Colorado, Coach Prime, they're heading to Pullman, or they headed to Pullman. I think they learned yesterday or a couple days ago that it's actually easier, and I think this is the only way to get to Pullman via plane is you fly into Idaho and then you drive, because it is closer to Idaho than it is to like Seattle. It's way out there in the boondocks. It's way out there in the middle of nowhere, and Colorado needs a big win. They need a big win. They have a winnable game here. This is, by all accounts, the most winnable game left on their schedule of the two games. Obviously, next week against Utah is not going to be easy by any means. I think this Washington State team is very beatable. They've lost 6 straight. So they started off the season 4-0. They were kind of like a nice story because they beat number 19 Wisconsin, and then they beat number 14 Oregon State. And then it was like, oh, cool. Washington State's really good, good for them. The conference is dying, the conference is dying. They don't really have a home. Good for them for finding a spot or showing that they belong. And then they went on to lose to UCLA. Arizona blew the brakes off of them, and then Oregon beat them, and then Arizona State beat them, and then Stanford beat them, and then Cal beat them. And so it's just been an ongoing tumble. And so they feel like they're due for a win. They could still make a bowl game if they beat Colorado and Washington. Colorado could still make a bowl game if they beat Washington State and Utah. So both these teams need a win here to keep their bowl hopes alive. And for Colorado, there's a few position groups that need to step up. And for one, it's always going to be the offensive line. That's just the obvious, easy one. They're going to be the position group that needs to step up until they obviously are replaced. So they're probably going to need to step up until next year, is what I'm saying. This offensive line, they gave up against Arizona. Shedeur Sanders was sacked 3 times. They gave up 3 tackles for a loss. And Shedeur was getting hit quite a bit. And if it wasn't for him running, I think he would have been sacked about 6 or 7 times. So there's that. I would also say the secondary needs to step up. Not because they've been bad, but because we know what Washington State wants to do. They're one of the worst running. This game is going to be all passing, minimal running. These are 2 of the worst rushing offenses in the country. So this is going to be a duel between quarterback. It's going to be Shedeur Sanders versus Cam Ward. It's going to be who could sling the ball all over the yard more and more successfully. And it's probably going to be that's probably going to determine who the winner is. So these are rush offense ranks. So, and this is out of all the programs in the country. You have Colorado, which obviously they aren't known for their rushing because obviously their offense line is never able to give them the push or the boost they need. They rank 130th out of 130. And so not great. You go up 2 spots to 128, and there's Washington State. Colorado averages 69.9 yards per carry or per game, and then Washington averages 80.5, and they have 2.84 yards per carry. Colorado has 2.3. So minimal rushing attack. It's gonna be like the old Big 12, where it's like Patrick Mahomes versus Baker Mayfield, and in a sense, these 2 quarterbacks are both future NFL quarterbacks, and so it's gonna be a big game. It's gonna be like the winning quarterback's probably gonna have 500 yards throwing. Let me check the weather though. Game time weather has it at 39 degrees, so it's going to be chilly. But if there's rain, that's what would worry me. Let's see. A little bit of showers. Oh, goodness. If there's showers tonight, it will be rough because obviously, I don't know you guys probably didn't see it. It was when Stanford was playing against Washington State, it was pouring rain. Oh, it just says cloudy, so hopefully it's all right. It was pouring rain, and it was so slippery that no one could catch the ball. Receivers were dropping everything, and there was 2 big passing plays. At one point, the biggest play of the game was 10 yards. So Colorado needs some good weather. Otherwise, they're going to have to rely on their run game, which they don't have. And then Washington State, I think their defense is slightly better. I'd give them the edge, but You need the secondary to step up, prevent Cam Ward from airing it out. Travis Hunter needs to get a pick or two to make this a ball game for Colorado. So you need the offensive line to step up. You need the secondary to step up. And then also, this is just what it is. What it is. This is no shade to anyone. Better game management. Colorado has been plagued by game management. Play calling hurt them against Oregon State. They had a chance to go into the half, only down 7-3. They tried this thing where they threw the ball 2 times to kill the clock when the clock was literally running down and they could have ended it. And instead they threw the ball twice, incomplete pass, ran the ball. Oregon State calls a timeout, and then they score a touchdown. So rather than it being 7-3 going into the half and Colorado having a chance to take the lead when they come back, it was 14-3. And any momentum was lost. And so there was that. Arizona game, they had the lead. They just didn't take advantage of it. And I think there's some, obviously you got to execute as players, but I think there's some game management that goes into winning, and just what we're not seeing from Colorado yet is a lot of game management issues. So that will be interesting. When we come back, I'm going to give you my 3 keys to Colorado winning. I obviously gave you the position groups that need to step up, but what needs to happen for Colorado to win? Because obviously they've been struggling. It hasn't been pretty by any means. But first, a message from our sponsor over at PrizePicks. If you haven't heard about PrizePicks, well, now you have. PrizePicks is the most fun I've had, winning up to 25 times my money this football season, and now I can play during basketball season too. You just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on the projected stats, and place your entry. You could play alongside some of PrizePicks' favorites, like favorite players like Meek Mill, comedian Andrew Schultz. You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each week. They even offer a reboot policy, so your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured, for football and basketball games. If you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code lockedoncollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for a first deposit match up to $100. It's daily fantasy sports made easy. Welcome back. We are talking about my 3 keys to victory tonight. The game is if you guys didn't realize, the game is on a Friday night. Little Friday night action, 7:30 p.m. Pacific time, 8:30 Mountain time, and then 10:30 for those of you on the East Coast. So it's going to be a late one that Coach Prime doesn't appreciate. But hey, welcome to the Pac-12 and welcome to the Big 12, because they've been playing some late night games as well. So what do we need for Colorado to win? What do we need? 3 keys. 1, Shedeur Sanders has to have a big performance. He has big performances just about every week, but he is the heart and soul of this offense, basically the heart and soul of this team. If he doesn't play up to his best, they lose. In their last 4 games that they've lost, he's thrown for 262 yards, 245 yards, 217, and then 400 yards, and they lost that game. So he just really needs to, I think it's timely scoring for Shedeur. I think there's moments where defenses really key in on something and take away a lot of his weapons or his top option or his top look, and that's when Colorado struggles. And then Colorado ends up falling behind, and then they come back, but it's a little too late. So Shedeur Sanders, the key for him is timely scoring, timely possessions. Colorado needs to score as much as possible, which isn't like, hello, welcome to sports. But there's times where they have opportunities either to take a lead, extend a lead, or tie a game, and they simply haven't been able to do it. And it's kind of a tough it's been a tough breakdown for them, because obviously if Shedeur's not capitalizing, then the team as a whole is struggling, and we can't have that. Second thing, 3 keys, one of the biggest keys, and this is obviously it's easier said than done. Colorado's defense doesn't have many sacks. They have their leading player, or their leading sack getter, is Jordan Dominic with 5. They have 24 as a team. They need to bring Cam Ward down. And so if you watch any Washington State game and you watch Cam Ward, you look at the Oregon game last year, the Stanford game, even in the rain a couple weeks ago, Oregon State game, the dude is hard to bring down. So that play last week against Arizona where Shedeur is running around in the backfield for I think he got like a total of 3 yards, but he avoided like 4 sack attempts. Yeah, Cam Ward does that like every other play. That's like his calling card. He is super hard to bring down. You can have him dead to rights, and he'll just wiggle out of it. And all of a sudden, he's scrambling, and then someone down the field that's a long time to cover for the corner. So he just chucks it down the field, and someone's, of course, open 40 yards down the field because he has a big arm too. So realistically, you got to stop Cam Ward, or you got to bring Cam Ward down. These defensive backs have to stay in coverage, but more importantly, the defensive line and the linebackers, whoever's blitzing, you got to bring them down. If you can't bring them down, it's going to be a tough day because he will make you pay. He does it all the time. That is literally probably his best skill set, aside from his arm strength, is his elusiveness in the pocket. And it's easier said than done to be like, yeah, just tackle him. Because in the Stanford game, for instance, or I think it was, what game? There was a game, I don't remember which game it was that I was watching him, but someone tackled it, or basically had him sacked, and he was kept his legs turning, he was moving, and then all of a sudden they grabbed onto his shirt because he was slipping away, and his shirt ripped, and then all of a sudden he rips down a 40-yard pass down the field, and they scored. I think either that play or the next play. So he's really difficult to kind of bring down, and Colorado's defensive line needs to bring him down. Third key to the game, protect the ball. Colorado hasn't had many issues protecting the ball, but Washington State, obviously, if this game is a shootout and you kind of give them an extra possession, you may be giving them the key to the game. You may be handing the game over to them because obviously, say the first one to score 50 points wins, or the first one to score 40 points wins. Well, if you give Washington State back-to-back possessions, and especially in promising field position, that could be an issue. I'm going to add a fourth special edition key just because this Colorado team is struggling with this, and I think that I don't really know what the issue is. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of things that go into this. It's just not like it's not something you can account for, I guess. It's something you could try to address, but it keeps happening. So obviously Colorado struggles with this every week, and that is penalties. Colorado ranks number 130 in penalties per game. So they have 95 total, which is the most in the country. They've given up 745 yards of penalties. So 95 divided by 10, that's like, I think that's 9.5 if I'm not a mathematician. I could be wrong, but yeah, so they're averaging nearly 10 penalties a game, and that is absolutely killer. That's my extra bonus key to the game because you can't extend drives for these teams. All these teams that have really good quarterbacks don't need help. So if you somehow stop them and then say you get flagged for unsportsmanlike conduct or defensive holding or illegal substitution, you messed up. You messed up big because they don't need that extra help. They don't need you to they would like it obviously, but they don't need you to give them an extra play because they will make you pay. And that's what's been hurting Colorado this entire season. Like you look at, let's just go to their last couple games. Last week, they played against Arizona, right? We go to team stats right here over on our trusty friend over at ESPN. Colorado had 11 penalties for 83 yards. Not great. Week prior, Oregon State, a game that they kind of were in the mix for a little bit, but then obviously quickly fell out of it. 8 penalties. Oregon State had 4. Then UCLA. And we all know there was one big penalty in this one, which was Shedeur Sanders getting ejected for targeting. 9 for 85. Stanford game. I think the Stanford game was the least disciplined team I've ever seen. Colorado, 17 for 127. So they are literally, they have more penalty yards per game than they have rushing yards per game, which isn't great. So if Colorado has any chance of winning, they need to clean this up. And it's kind of been a major issue for them all year. And it's not really something that I don't think it's fixable now, but I think they just need to be, they need to think about it, or at least try to figure something out, because obviously there's a lot of disciplinary penalties that have been avoidable. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by our sponsor over at Athletic Brewing Company. They have completely changed the game, just like Coach Prime has with the transfer portal. They've completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good. They brew over 50 styles of craft non-alcoholic beers, including IPAs, golden, sours, and more. And they're constantly releasing limited edition experimental styles to add to their variety. They're fit for all time, so you can drink them anywhere and make any activity even more enjoyable, like watching a big game, your kid's game, tackling work, or a workout. You can find them in-store, online, and at bars around the country. And they're the fastest growing non-alcoholic brewery in the U.S., so get on board. They have a little quiz you could take to find your perfect flavor. That's what I did. Worked out perfectly for me. I'm not a big beer guy, not a big, just big beerish brew guy. And they found the perfect flavor for me based on the taste I like. So first customers can use code locked on to get 15% off your first online order. That's code LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. Welcome back. We are talking about the Colorado-Washington State game. It is tonight. Washington State is favored by 4, according to ESPN. I think that's kind of a generous line. Usually home teams are favored by 3, so they're kind of they spotted them 1 point, 1 extra point. Washington State has a 59% chance to win, according to ESPN's matchup predictor, which is their analytics machine. In their last 5 games, Colorado's 1-4, and their last 5 games, Washington State is 0-5. Common opponents. Washington State lost to Arizona State. Colorado beat Arizona State. Washington State lost to Stanford, as did Colorado. And then they both lost to they didn't play UCLA yet. No, they did play UCLA. What am I talking about? They played UCLA early in the season and lost. That was the beginning of their losing streak. So 6 games ago. My prediction for this game. I know a lot of people are down on Colorado. I know a lot of people are down on Coach Prime. I think they win this game. And I think they win thanks to Shedeur Sanders nonetheless. I think him and Travis Hunter are going to make a lot of big plays for Colorado. I think this is going to be an Xavier Weaver type of game. And obviously I just shouted out Travis Hunter. But I think Xavier Weaver is Colorado's most complete, all-around best receiver, or most productive, I would say. I don't know. There's obviously Travis Hunter is probably the most skilled player on the team, but something about Xavier Weaver where he's just always making the right play. He's always in the right spot at the right time. Also, it's worth noting that both these teams rank in passing yards allowed. Washington State ranks 110th and Colorado ranks 128th. So their defenses are really bad. Their offense is powerful. Defense is really bad. It's going to be a high-scoring game. I think – let me see the over-under because I think that would be a fun little discussion too. Because obviously there's going to be some scoring. Over under 60.5. I think they clear that. I think it's going to be like a 70-point game combined. I think Colorado wins. I think this is an Xavier Weaver game. Maybe we see a little more running from Colorado. Obviously, they're not good at it, or they're not effective at it as you would like them to be, but they did have a little bit success against Arizona at times, and I think they, as they have all year, kind of abandoned it. Savion Wilkerson had 7 carries for 21 yards, which isn't great, but they were showing a lot more of a willingness to run outside of Shedeur. And I think they need to just take chances with the run game a little bit, get Dylan Edwards out in open space. They haven't really been able to do that, and that's where he's most effective, not between the tackles, as we've seen all year. So I think Colorado wins this game. I think it's going to be a final score of 42-37. I think it's going to be a high-scoring, entertaining one that if this were happening at the beginning of the year, everyone would be like, oh, my gosh, this is a crazy game. But now that they're 4-6, everyone's like, Colorado's not as good anymore. Washington State not as good anymore. Also, I think this was one of the games I had them winning prior to the season. I've always seen Washington State as a more brutal or tougher opponent in terms of to gauge because they started off strong last year. And so I was like, I think – based off what I saw last year and what they are, I didn't have faith in their defense, and I still don't, obviously. Not that they're not that good. But I think this is still a win for Colorado. And a win here obviously keeps Colorado in bowl contention, which they obviously very badly need. And it's going to be interesting nonetheless. Also, over here at Locked On, we're doing this cool new thing where it's called the 24/7 streaming channel. So Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. It's really cool. You guys should go check it out. They talk about everything you need to know about all things sports, college football, NBA, NFL, NHL, whatever it may be, they got it. Okay. Back to the game. Yeah, I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think it's going to be minimal defense, a lot of offense, and I think Colorado ends their losing streak and gets back to the swagger that they once had because I think they're a shell of their former selves. I think the Oregon game really took the wind out of their sails, which, I mean, it was embarrassing of the video that Oregon put out where they were talking all that smack and then lost by 50 or whatever it was. But I think Colorado wins this game. Let me guys know what you guys think in the comments, and I will have my recap tomorrow morning because the game's going to end so late, and we'll talk about everything that went right or wrong for the Buffaloes. I appreciate you guys for tuning in to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borbin, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.